Hello, welcome back to a new series of Gardener's World, and we'll be with you now for the rest of the gardening year. But at this point in the season, as winter comes to an end, the garden is changing almost by the hour, and new things are appearing every moment. For example, look at this. This hellebore was completely closed just earlier this morning, and now it's opened up, this incredible slaty plum colour. And what I love about this time of year is that you come out and you greet old friends and you're just drawn into the garden. And as usual, I'm joined by Carol, Joe and Rachel. Carol will be spending some of her time in her own garden in Devon. And this year she's also going to be out and about, looking for relatives of our garden plants growing in their natural habitat.
Just look at this, it's absolutely magical.
Joe is starting out this year with a series of design masterclasses to help us all make the most of our gardens, whatever size or shape they are. Now, we all want to have as much winter colour as we can get in our gardens. And this week, Rachel gets some ideas from a Hampshire garden that is filled with colour and fabulous fragrance right through the winter. Well, it's been a winter of extremes. We've had drought in the southeast, intense rain up in the northwest, but here in the middle of the country, it's been pretty normal. We've had some snow and ice, but on the whole, we've been able to get out on most days and do some work. And one of the biggest jobs we've done is to cut down the coppice. Now, this is the part of the coppice that is left, made up of hazels that have been growing uncut for the last 7 or 8 years, with these multi-stems. But for the whole of that side and half of this side, we've cleared it right down to the ground. It's flooded light in, and you can apply the technique to any corner of the garden. All the flowers beneath respond by growing really well, and then the shade gradually builds up. And then you can cut it back again whenever you like. So you're controlling the light, and as a result, you get a really beautiful balance of trees, shrubs, and flowers. One of the additional benefits of taking the coppice down is that it should let a lot more light into the jewel garden. And although it's fairly empty now, we know from last year that by June, July and on into late summer, this will be packed with colour. And one of the benefits will be that the shrubs that we planted last year will be much bigger. However, just because they're going to get bigger, that doesn't mean to say that they don't necessarily need pruning. And buddleia does much better if it's pruned really hard in early spring. Now, this is buddleia davidii, butterfly bush, wonderful, rich purple flowers. But those flowers are carried on new growth. So the answer is to remove most of last year's growth. Now, you can see that down the stem, there are all these new buds growing along the length of it. And it would be completely safe to cut down to the very bottom. Because this is in the middle of a border and we've got hedges around and there'll be other plants hiding the bottom, I'm actually going to cut a bit higher up. So we'll just take a cut there. And then the smaller bits we can cut right off. Now, all the vigour of the plant is going into the new shoots, the ones which are going to carry the flowers. This is also the perfect time of year to prune clematis. Now, I know people get confused by clematis pruning. Well, there's one little rhyme that helps make it easier, and that is, if it flowers before June, don't prune. But the later flowering clematis, like this one here, produces its flowers on new growth. Now, I could, like buddleia, prune this right at the base. Again, because it's in the middle of a border, I want to leave about 1 foot or 2, so all the flowers appear above the plants that grow around them. The one principle of all pruning is cut to something. Don't just hack away indiscriminately. Go back to a bud or a leaf or a node, so I can get in there and just cut. Now, obviously, if you're inheriting a garden or you're not sure when it flowers or what type of flowering it was, don't prune at all. Just watch it, make a note of when it flowers, and then next spring, you'll know whether to give it a really good hack or to leave well alone. The most flower-filled part of the garden at this time of year is the spring garden. At the beginning of the year, the snowdrops and hellebores gradually appear. Then their place is taken by the early spring bulbs and perennials. And following on from them is a froth of cow parsley and tulips under the developing canopy of foliage. One of the key spring garden plants in the first few months of the year is this. It's winter flowering honeysuckle. Now at first glance, it looks rather scruffy. It's got twiggy branches and tiny flowers. But what flowers they are. Hardly anything smells better than Lonicera fragrantissima. Now, I need to get more fragrance into Longmeadow, and I will be working on that over the year. But winter fragrance is especially treasured. And Rachel's been to a garden in Hampshire which is packed with winter-scented plants.
If you think gardens can be dreary places between October and March, well, think again. Here at the Sir Harold Hillier Winter Garden, there is an incredible range of breathtakingly colourful winter flowering plants that would brighten up even the gloomiest winter day.
Many winter flowering shrubs give us that early injection of zingy colour. But what these delicate little blooms lack in size, they most certainly make up for in scent. But which one is best for which situation?
This Hamamelis Aphrodite is looking spectacular at the moment. It's like a firecracker. Well, actually, it's a really good plant all the way through the year. You get new growth produced, new stems in the spring, and then they ripen gradually, they produce buds. And then in the autumn, fantastic foliage colour as well, really good autumnal display. And then in the winter, well, slowly the buds burst, and you've got these fantastic shaggy flowers that look almost otherworldly. And this particular shrub, this has been flowering now for nearly 2 months, which is extraordinary. And the fragrance is, oh, well, it's citrusy, but almost with a bit of spice in it too. I just think, most fantastic plant.
Plant a Hamamelis where you will enjoy it the most, either near to the house so you can enjoy its fiery blooms, or next to a path so you catch its heady scent as you walk past. Many winter flowering shrubs have small blooms because anything bigger would be battered by the weather. Instead, they have an intense perfume to lure pollinating insects like hibernating bumblebees, who on a warm day will leave the nest to forage for food.
Well, here's a shrub you are likely to see plenty of bees buzzing around. Wintersweet, Chimonanthus praecox. This one's called Maruyama. It's got that really unusual sort of fresh, almost lemony coloured flowers. It comes from China, and actually it's very much threatened over there because of deforestation, so all the more reason to grow it in your garden here. Now it gets pretty big, and it's not a thing of great beauty in the summer. So a good suggestion would be to grow it as a wall shrub, and in fact I've grown it with a clematis viticella through it, so you get that second season of interest. But actually, you know, here in the middle of winter, when you get a day like this, and it's this fragrant, well, that's all that matters.
But not all scented winter flowers bloom on bare stems. Evergreen shrubs that come from the forests of China and Southeast Asia make useful ground cover in the garden. The evergreen Sarcococca hookeriana will tolerate dry shade, and its tiny flowers, which really aren't much to look at, pump out a rich vanilla scent. But the Daphnes are renowned for having the sweetest and most intense fragrance. Many are evergreen, and in a sheltered spot in winter, Daphne buddleia Jacqueline Postel will infuse the entire garden with its delicious perfume.
Now it needs a bit of shelter really to thrive, and also it doesn't like being pruned, so choose your spot carefully first, make sure it's got room to breathe, and then let it do its thing.
All these cheerful winter flowering shrubs can tolerate light shade and will flower on the frostiest of days. Although some like a bit of shelter, with their knockout scent they definitely deserve a place in the garden.
Obviously, winter-scented plants are at their very best right now, and we should enjoy them for that. But there's an awful lot to do in the garden in March, which won't show any kind of harvest for months. And certainly that's true of soft fruit. And if you want to grow some soft fruit, now is the time to plant it. And the ones I particularly want to grow more of are raspberries. A fresh raspberry, you just go out into the garden and just pull it off that white cone, put it in your mouth, and it has that wonderful bursting fruity sensation. Heaven. Now I've already put up a structure to support more summer fruiting raspberries, and you can see it's a fairly sturdy affair. Good strong posts, a cross tie beam to stop them moving inwards, and I've put wires along here. Now you do need something spaced regularly up the height of the structure to support the canes. They're very floppy and quite heavy, and if they blow around you can damage them. Now raspberries like good drainage, plenty of moisture, they'll take a little bit of shade, and they don't mind coolness. They are just little brown sticks, and that's fine, because what we're after is a nice, strong central stem with a root system. See, there's a good one. You notice the roots are very shallow. They grow almost horizontal, and planting them is easy enough. I'm just scraping away the soil, just planting it slightly below the surface and firming it in. Eventually that's going to produce 5 or 6 stems, so that it will spread out. So I need to allow enough room for the next one, and the closest you can reasonably do is about 18 inches. Now this is a variety called Glen Moy, one of the earlier summer fruiting varieties, very reliable, absolutely delicious, and highly recommended. And what I'm doing is I'm adding Glen Moy and Glen Ample. Glen Ample follows on from Glen Moy a few weeks later, and so that staggers the production. There's always this thing at this time of year, you're planting and your hands are filthy, then you have to get your knife out your pocket, so your pocket becomes full of dirt. And as well as summer fruiting raspberries, I shall also be planting autumn fruiting varieties in exactly the same way. A really important part of planting raspberries in particular is mulching. Almost anything will do as long as it's not mushroom compost, which is too alkaline. And the real virtue, apart from feeding them, is it keeps the roots cool. It stops them being baked by sun, and because they're hard to weed, it keeps weeds down and keeps moisture in. So it's just doing a lot of good work. The main thing is not to be intimidated by growing raspberries. Give it a go. Remember that they're just a bramble, really. And in fact, in Elizabethan times, raspberries were collected from the wild and people carefully cultivated blackberries in their gardens. And this year, Carol is going to be going out into the countryside, looking for plants growing in their natural environment, so that then we can take from watching them how best to grow them in our gardens.
Ever since I was a tiny little girl, I've been fascinated by wildflowers. And the older I get and the more into my gardening I become, the more I realise just how much I can learn from them. This week I'm in Essex, rummaging through Hatfield Forest, an ancient medieval hunting forest just outside Bishop's Stortford. And I'm here on the hunt for one of the most iconic flowers of the season, the hellebore. At this bleak, barren time of year. You'd expect them all to be hiding, waiting for the spring to arrive. But even now, some of these beautiful wildflowers are beginning to disport themselves. And just look at this, it's absolutely magical. This is Hellebores foetidus. It's one of our only 2 native hellebores. And these lovely laden leaves make this beautiful base for these big sprigs of bright lime green flowers. And each of these bell-shaped flowers is just ringed in sort of scarlet. And there they are, just doing their thing and getting on with it and saying, this is our time of year. Their stunning shapes and exotic colours, their hardiness and early flowering have made hybrids of Hellebores orientalis a popular choice in our gardens. Helped along by growers like Lorna Jones, who has bred her own remarkable Hellebore collection. I mean, it's so clear, Lorna, looking around, that this is an absolute obsession, isn't it?
Well, I've always been a keen gardener, and when I got my first garden at 18, I got my first 2 hellebore plants. Gradually over the years, I started hybridising. It's obviously a very slow thing. I mean, it can take me 3 generations to really get any results, and that can be a decade. And although a plant might be an improvement on the parent, it might very well not be. So it's a case of selecting those few plants that come through that are better.
So what is it you're looking for in a hellebore?
The shape of a flower being really perfect. I like the nice round flower shape.
Yeah.
The actual stature of a plant, so whether it's upright or, in the case of this one, where it is sort of hanging over slightly, that's something that I...
It's got dodgy deportment, this,
yes,
hasn't it? It's got a tendency to go like that.
Yes.
Individual flowers, Lorna,
are really beautiful, yes.
For me, a hellebore has to have a slightly pendulous head. I mean, that's what it's all about, with the sun coming through those sepals.
Yeah, certainly the sun brings out the dark colours very nicely, so... I always recommend that they're planted, if conditions allow, if you have a heavy clay soil, to plant them where at least some sun will get to them during the day, because it does really set off the reds and the slate blues. I think they need moisture, that's the thing. If they're in the sun, they need to be in a moist position. If you have sandy soil, then it's not going to be good in full sun.
The great majority of your plants are forms of Hellebores hybridus.
Yes.
But we've got just nothing like this in the wild, have we?
Well, there are 2 types that grow in Britain, foetidus and viridis, which is now more correctly called occidentalis. I've been crossing hybrid plants with the species plants to get something that's hopefully small but very vigorous, and this is an example of one of the plants I've produced.
So pretty. It's got that very, very wildy look about it.
It has, and it's got very pretty little flowers when you look into them, the purple and the green.
And it's very nice stature altogether, isn't it? It really is pretty. Lorna has been harvesting the pollen from a colony of occidentalis she found growing not far from where she lives, and she shared their secret location with me. This plant has sort of seeded itself all over this piece of scrubby woodland. And did you ever see a plant that was so perfectly in tune with its situation? Of course, the 2 have evolved together. In the summer, this whole place will be full of nettles, and you won't be able to see this little hellebore. And that's part of this evolution. Then it needs the shade. Right now, it appreciates all this light, and insects can come in and pollinate it. If we look closely at the sort of soil and situation that our wildflowers grow in, and try and emulate those conditions when we're growing their cultivated cousins in our own gardens, then we should be able to grow them successfully and give them just what they need to thrive.
Now, this is done, not a lot to see for it, but next year, the taste should be fantastic. And I see this as an investment in delicious food. Now, let's go and look at something a little bit more dramatic. Winter is a really good time to take stock of the structure of the garden and see the bones clearly, and from that to make decisions about changes to the design and the layout. And this winter we've made one really big change. We've dug a big hole for a pond. Now this still is the damp garden. Over winter, all the plants were taken out and potted up so they can come back in again. And then the pond was dug, creating different levels so we can have marginal plants, a nice deep bit in the middle so we can have water lilies, and then all the shelves at different heights will take different planting. It feels like an exciting prospect, and we'll be filming this right across the year as gradually it takes shape and becomes fully itself. But the next step is to put in a liner, and that's certainly the two-man job. Now the person I'll get to come and help me will be Joe, but I need to be fairly quick because although I want his muscle and perhaps his advice while he's here, Joe is a garden designer, and this year he's doing a garden for Chelsea. And over the next 5 weeks, he's going to be looking at 5 different aspects of garden design.
Great garden design is about combining aesthetics with practical solutions. In this series, I'm going to work through the key design elements that you'll find in any successful garden. All these elements are there to be controlled and manipulated, but the trick to making your garden a success is to make everything work together. So how do you do that? Personalise your space, have a vision, and be true to it at every stage. Over the next few weeks, I'll be taking a close look at 6 different gardens of all shapes and sizes that illustrate beautifully all the elements of good garden design. This week, we're starting with boundaries. I'm beginning with boundaries because they define the garden setting and the space you have to work within. The smaller the garden gets, the more important the boundaries are because the ratio of boundaries to garden space increases, and in a town or city setting, your boundaries can provide seclusion and privacy from your neighbouring buildings. Now here, there's some oversized hedges at the back, but I really like the way it relates to the house, the same height as the building, so they become living pieces of architecture. There's a big block of Portuguese laurel at the back there, but over here we've got holly, and this just subtly breaks it up. We've got a contrast with the way the light plays on the texture of the evergreen foliage. You may want to let plenty of sun into the garden, so low or high, the perfect hedge height will be the balance you choose between light and privacy. Green boundaries are wonderful for melting away the edges of your garden, so if you have hard edges like walls and fences, grow evergreens against them to create a softer, more soothing space. If you need an instant and economic boundary, I think fences can be great. Open wood structures keep the garden lighter in feel and reduce costs. If you get on with your neighbours, they can work well in both an urban and rural setting. Trellising is also a great choice for a slightly more open boundary that can be softened with planting. And trellising can be customised to look really stylish, especially in a contemporary setting. Now you may have or have inherited some ugly boundaries in your garden, but don't feel like you've got to live with them forever, because there's loads of ways of cosmetically treating them to visually enhance the garden. Something like this. This is heather screening. It comes in rolls. It's really lightweight and pretty economic too. And you can get them in heather like this or willow or bamboo. So think about how it's going to work with the style of your garden. But in design terms, I like the way that it harmonises the boundaries in general. It's a dark backdrop to the planting in front, so it really sets off the green, say, of Akebia quinata. But also it's a good textural material too, adding even more interest. Now, if you've got great boundaries like this, they're adding value to the garden. Don't cover them up, leave them exposed, but maybe not entirely exposed, because here there's some ivy which is breaking it up, softening it a little bit, but also the areas of brick that you can see add a lovely rhythm to the garden and stop the whole garden feeling too static. If you're lucky enough to have a beautiful view from your garden, you could just use a mound like this as a boundary, which will still define the edge of the garden, but allow you to borrow from the landscape beyond. Whether you inherit them or create them yourself, making the most of your boundaries will go a long way towards creating a great garden. Make your boundary choices with the bigger picture in mind, and you'll be one step closer to creating your own beautifully designed garden. Once you've defined your space and set the tone for the garden, you need to start thinking about how you're going to use it. And we're going to look at that next time when we explore garden layouts.
This is the Hungarian grazing rye that I sowed after we lifted the potatoes in August. And it served a number of purposes. Partly to keep weeds down because it's filling the space. Partly because it will fertilise the plot as the green of the top growth and the extensive roots rot down, but mainly because it improves the soil structure. This is a very heavy, claggy end of the garden. And I found in the past that Hungarian grazing rye opens the soil out. Now the idea is just to bury it. Don't try and tidy it up too much, but you can see the roots of this. There's a lot of root that comes off the plant, and it's that that's doing the work, and of course a lot more is left in the ground. There is some magic in working the soil. It's been a long winter, it's been cold, it's been wet, and to get out with the sun shining and just turn that soil over and smell it, it's alive. It makes me feel more alive. Right, I'll leave that for at least 3 weeks, and then sometime in April, that'll be ready to rake over and sow seeds into. And now that's done, here's some other jobs to get on with this weekend. This is a busy time of year for seed sowing, but some seeds need sowing more urgently than others. And chilies and peppers come top of that list because they're slow to germinate and slow to develop as seedlings. Fill a seed tray with a general purpose peat-free compost and scatter the seeds thinly over it. Then cover them with a light layer of either compost or vermiculite. Give them a soak and then put them in a warm place. If, like me, you stored some summer flowering bulbs in the dry, now is the time to wake them up. And the best way to do that is to take them out and give them a soak. This won't produce a dramatic reaction, but will trigger growth. And then, in a month or two's time, they'll be ready to plant outside. Well, that's it for today. We've had a perfect day today. Really beautiful, but don't forget that at this time of year, the weather can change in an instant to practically anything. So be a bit cautious with your tender plants still. But whatever the weather's like, I'll be back here next week and look forward to seeing you then. Bye-bye. Come on now.